This is going to be a shorter and faster video today because that's what's best, isn't it? I recently read on a forum, somebody wrote, why on earth would you need 3 sessions for depression? Use ABC technique and it is gone within 13 minutes, job done. The ABC technique is of course something that this trainer created and sells training for, by the way. So vroom vroom. Then loads of other fellow like-minded hypnotherapists joined in, piled in, laying the boot in to anyone and everyone who ever takes more than 30 minutes to cure their clients of depression, or anything else for that matter. It seems that if you do not offer the latest super fast, hyper, mega quick therapy intervention that cures anxiety, depression and every unwanted habit in a flash, then you have not been trained properly and are simply not awesome enough to be a member of the super cool ultra fast Zoom therapy brigade who yell "Yeehaaa" on the hour every hour to remind the world how fast they are going. And there's going to be some more yeehaw action from me in a short while. Now, you know what? I'm going to sober things up a little bit. I mean, you knew that, right? There is currently virtually no evidence to support such super speedy claims. When you examine the research, the latest concocted techniques marketed to the circles of willing listeners are pretty absent, you know. The claims can be supported by little more than anecdotal evidence made by the creator or the trainer. And this is rife in the field of hypnotherapy. For example, if you look at smoking cessation, the evidence is generally pretty poor and nowhere near as impressive as we may think. It's better than nicotine replacement therapy typically, but for smoking cessation, the evidence is not that strong for hypnosis and hypnotherapy. You can Google and read an article that I wrote back in 2011 on the evidence to support using hypnotherapy with smoking cessation. It's titled, what is the actual evidence for using hypnosis for stopping smoking? Something like that with my name, and you'll find that article. Go have a read and find the actual evidence, you know, look at some science. However, what credible studies by Holroyd in the 80s, Elkins and colleagues in the 2000s, Krasselneck in the 90s, Johnson and Karkut in the 90s, they all highlighted that the efficacy of hypnotherapy for smoking cessation is increased when you increase the number of sessions and create a more comprehensive program for the individual. And this would seem to fly in the face of masses and masses of hypnotherapists who still offer one-off single sessions for smoking cessation and are still trained that way. The majority of hypnotherapy training on offer does not teach as much as they continue to perpetuate the marketing of single session stop smoking sessions. Some of the strongest evidence that the field of hypnosis has is in the treatment of irritable bowel syndrome, for example, IBS. Go read the research published in The Lancet by Worrell in the 1980s, and then the follow-up 1987 study, or the research of Paulson in the early 2000s, with their studies and many other studies on this topic. You know, you'll see when you read them that there's no secret technique, no master key, no singular notion. Instead, persistence and investment of time and the development of self-efficacy is key. The evidence shows that typically 7 to 10 weekly sessions yields the best results. Additionally, the most evidence-based approaches to therapy in general all typically tend to involve a prolonged, considered treatment plan, whereby a depth of consideration is given and tailored for the individual. Hypnotherapy is typically a brief therapy, you know, don't get me wrong. Founder of modern hypnotism, James Brigade, typically saw his clients for 4 to 6 sessions, and the evidence would suggest that this is typical of the modern field. And this is miles better than the kind of average session numbers that Sigmund Freud had or his students had with their patients, which totaled hundreds, sometimes thousands. But this has not seemed to quell the appetite for something that has a much higher RPM. So why then do you suppose, you know, that forums are filled with commentary suggesting that actually far less sessions are needed or far less sessions are desirable? The evidence across all talk therapies tends to indicate that a working alliance is a very good predictor of therapeutic outcomes, though I would question what kind of working alliance is being developed in the super speedy lightning therapy session. Being a supportive, positive, ongoing support and influence in the client's life for a sustained period of time while working with them is an important role that we play. Likewise, many people may go to see the creator of a technique or invest loads of money in seeing a well-known trainer recommended by one of their graduates or students, and they may respond well because of the expectation or because of the awe that's afforded to that individual, because of the reputation or because of the way it was sold with such belief and enthusiasm by the referring individual. But the technique is then working for reasons over and beyond those that are being taught to others. And the same mechanisms may not be present when someone else is using that particular technique with a client. What about the people who do not get better in this allotted 30 minutes that our super duper mega speedy therapist has promised? What message is being sent to them? That they are incapable of getting better, that they are an exception? What message does that give them, and how is that likely to affect them? Because everyone else gets better in 30-minute time frame, don't they? Do they really? Do they really all get better in 30 minutes, you know? And are those offering these incredibly brief and fast promises of rapid change, are they systematically following up all of those that they work with and seeing how they are doing 6 months later, 12 months later, 18 months later, at least? And this is what is expected and carried out in good quality research. Quality research will give neutral follow-up statistics. Are the purveyors of the 30-minute cure-all technique following up in the same systematic, neutral fashion to support their claims? Of course they're not. But they have testimonials to prove their results. Of course they do. Testimonials highlight some of the people for whom the ultra lightning intervention worked for quite soon after they had the treatment. They do not publish reports of people for whom it did not work for, though, do they? Do they give accounts of those that were followed up 18 months later, 2 years later, to see how they progressed? Rarely. Very rarely, let's be honest. And even if they do share an 18-month follow-up, is that single person representative of most of those who engaged in that same process? Perhaps they are an exception themselves, the person that got better, perhaps they're the exception. What about those who are sharing all these successful demonstrations or video clips of curing someone there and then? Firstly, that person knows they're on camera and you run the risk of it being compliance. Secondly, those who volunteer for such demonstrations have a particular mindset that is absent when working with someone in a real-life therapy environment. And half the time, it's a class student who is the demonstration volunteer, not a real-life member of the public. The scenarios are often idealized, the therapeutic scenarios, not an accurate reflection of the kinds of clients that you'd see in real life hypnotherapy sessions as a professional. So, it's with a heavy heart I say this, I could go on with the critique of the faster the better mindset in therapy, but I'm not going to. I just wanted to offer up some alternative thought process here today, Isn't it okay for us to slow things down a little bit? Isn't it okay to be thorough and diligent? Isn't it okay to responsibly examine what the evidence would suggest rather than a well-sold anecdote or a loudly marketed protocol? As you can probably tell, I've got little interest in becoming the therapist equivalent of the Dukes of Hazzard who sprint to the General Lee, jump in through the windows, thrash the living daylights out of the engine and scream, "Yeehaw!" as they fly over a ramp and land with several shoulder-jarring bounces and thuds just because the adrenaline will subside. And you only find the same desire to scream like that by doing it all again repeatedly. You see, I'd rather have some due diligence, an occasional gentleness, time to digest, adequate, insightful reflection, deep consideration, and some responsible adherence to evidence-based consideration with my clients. I'd rather tailor solutions, not just blanket approach them all with a single technique that's been sold and marketed well, but has no evidence to support it. I'd rather equip clients with lifelong preventative coping skills and help them develop self-efficacy. It upsets me greatly also that those selling their super speedy techniques are so unprofessionally critical of the techniques and strategies that do have evidence but take longer, and then base their criticism upon their own experience. And they'll say, I see loads of clients who had CBT or classical hypnotherapy, and those longer processes did not work for them. But you see, if it had worked for them, they wouldn't have come to see you, would they? All the great many people who do get a huge amount of benefit from lengthier evidence-based approaches, they're busy enjoying their lives, free of their issue, not coming to see you. You are only ever going to see people who it has not worked for. Surely you recognize that, and you cannot cast judgment on entire fields of evidence-based hypnotherapy approaches just because you've seen a few clients for whom those processes did not work for. And there are many other reasons it didn't work other than the approach was to blame. Clinician competence, other life occurrences, all sorts of things that could be what contributed to it not working on that particular occasion. I can understand to some small extent, some speedier approaches to some habit-based issues, but something as complex as depression, really? So my final thought on this is a question. If the 30-minute depression cure truly exists, then why do we still have depression as prolifically as we do? Why is the world not? Why is it not going down? Why are the current World Health Organization statistics demonstrating that depression is vastly increasing around the globe? And why are so many mental health organizations so focused in on heightening awareness on depression currently? You see, the guy with the 30-minute lifetime super speedy cure is the answer. Isn't he the answer? The World Health Organization and Mind and the Mental Health Foundation and all the depression researchers throughout history, they're all wrong and ill-informed, aren't they? Because they've clearly not done the right research. Why have they just not all discovered the guy with the super speedy answers just yet? Are they all blind? Are they all wrong? Or is Big Pharma obscuring them, or some other lame excuse? Because surely the super speedy 30-minute depression cure guy knows better than everybody else, doesn't he? Why is there no evidence to support his protocol or this particular technique that he's invented? Why are they not engaging in research to support what they do, testing it against placebo to see if it actually works effectively and for a good lengthy time period? You see, I'm all for experimental approaches. I'm a researcher myself. I'm all for advancing what we do. But I genuinely do not think that faster is always better. And I think it holds back the progress of this field to keep on pitching the idea that the fastest is best. It's a thinly veiled facade most of the time. I think it's highly unprofessional in many cases, and it sends out this poor message. It creates a lot of myth and misinformation, and it pushes this field further into the fringes, away from the kind of acceptable, conventional medical environment where we want to be. Okay, thanks for listening.